African Americans built this nation. You built this nation. You know, you're just starting to get real credit for that.
Today, we hear from freedmen Black Americans speaking out on the growing disrespect coming from some Africans, Caribbeans, and Black Latinos, and how they continue to not understand and dismiss our unique culture and history. Check it out.
Oh, baby, you hit the nail on the head. People took pan-Africanism as Black people looking for an identity instead of viewing it as trying to be collaborative. That's 100% on point. And that's the reason, but the issue that I've always had with pan-Africanism is first of all, it doesn't benefit Black Americans at all. And it really created like this woe is me, lost orphan type of like view of Black America. Like we're just like looking for some type of identity, looking for some type of homeland, looking for somewhere to belong, or so to speak, I guess you could say. And that's the issue that I've always had with it, that it was never like, I don't think it ever really was empowering for Black Americans. I always felt like it was very disempowering to us, and it always made the rest of the Black people around the world feel like, oh, that's so sad that those Black Americans don't have a home, they don't have a culture, they don't have a country to go back to, they don't have a language. That's so sad. And it's like, nah, we not no cultural charity case. We not looking for no identity.
Black American delineation has nothing to do with anti-African, anti-Caribbean, or anti-other Black nations. It's about preserving culture, preserving inheritance, setting aside a particular group so that they are not forgotten. They don't want their ancestors, the sacrifice of their ancestors. They don't want the sacrifice of their people to be forgotten. You say that they don't have culture. You say that they don't have identity. And when they decide to set themselves apart, you say that they shouldn't. And no other culture is expected to absorb everybody else except Black Americans. You don't go to Jamaica and say, you got to accept us as Jamaican. You don't go to Haiti and say, you got to accept us as Haitian. Everybody else can have their identity. But when it comes to Black Americans wanting to set themselves apart, you say, oh no, you guys you're xenophobic, you're Zionists. No, stop gaslighting them. Are there some extremists? Yes. But that doesn't represent the whole group. It's important that this group is set aside because they do have an inheritance. They have a special tie to this land and a special history to this land, and they deserve that observation.
Y'all understand logically that Black Americans are Americans as a nationality, but you don't culturally understand it. Y'all don't culturally understand the difference, and therefore you struggle to actually grasp and be able to hold space for the complicated, contradictory nuances of that identity. And I'll use Cowboy Carter as an example, but it goes beyond that. Y'all don't really grasp what we mean when we say that our roots are here. Our roots, our culture being built here, our ancestors, literal blood, sweat, and tears in the very fabric of this land, of this country. So you often mistake what we're doing as patriotism when it's actually veneration, but it's by design. America wants you to think it's patriotism, and I'm gonna tell you exactly how. Because our culture is actively stolen, appropriated, and erased, when it's finally acknowledged as such, the only tools or imagery that's really used to talk about it is that of the American machine. You're actively seeing our culture being erased and being used as an export, being used as marketed as just American culture. Hoodoo having to be hidden and shielded behind Christianity and the Bible. Juneteenth, once it's finally nationally recognized, has to be an American holiday. AAVE being talked about as a Southern accent. There's so many examples, right? And what you're actively seeing, what we're all seeing, is our culture and history being actively erased and being told this is just American. So then we're told by Americans, right, this isn't your culture, it's American culture. And then everyone else tells us, oh, you're being patriotic when we do things that's actually ours. It's been a continuous cycle that has happened since our ancestors were forced to be enslaved here. Building a counterculture in the midst of an oppressive culture, the oppressors get a hold of it, take it for themselves, and then tell us it's not ours and make it theirs. And if it's not them stealing our culture, then it's something that our oppressors created, forced us to survive in, and we as a people had to find some sentimentality in it or make something from it. And good example of that is Thanksgiving, right? We know Thanksgiving has genocidal roots, and it was also something where it would be the only time that enslaved Africans could commune together. So now there's some cultural sentimentality attached to that, even though we as black people hate oppression. Contradictory as fuck. It was an enslaved black man that learned this mac and cheese recipe, brought it back, flipped it and reversed it, and now baked mac and cheese is a black American staple, and we seeing a whole bunch of recipes on TikTok. Either way, anything we do, create, participate, and engage in is shadowed by this broader American machine that's damn near impossible to separate ourselves from, even when we try to distance ourselves from it. Because America makes it impossible, and the world, y'all, make that also impossible. You also see the erasure and engage in the erasure because you dilute it down to just being something American. Which is why there's a push for really mainly only us in the diaspora to find out where we're really from. Because being from America isn't acceptable. Y'all understand the fact we're black American, but you don't like the fact that we're black American, and you blame us for it and project your feelings on the American machine onto us because America told you that you can. It's not acceptable to find pride here. We don't want to find pride here, and y'all don't want us to feel prideful, right? However, we have pride in our ancestors. We have pride for the blood, sweat, and tears that they put into this land. We have pride in what they created and what we continue to create while still actively living here. Now, if I bring this back into Cowboy Carter as an example, it would make sense why y'all struggle to see the reclamation aspect of it, or why you struggle to see the irony of her using certain imagery and the purposeful contradictoriness of it and the nuances of it. You don't have to agree with it, you can critique it, but y'all are struggling to see it, and you're just resorting it to American imagery. You're just resorting to that. Y'all struggle to see that whether you fucking like Beyonce or not, there's a whole subset of black American people that feel seen by this artistry, that she was speaking to them and speaking for them. Right, the black cowboys, right, the black equestrian girlies who got the horse camps that now that this has been on the big screen can finally get donations to keep it up and running. Black people's contributions and creation of country music and the culture. Right, putting y'all on to other black country artists, whether you like her or not. You can like these folks. You could learn this culture. You can learn the roots of it. You can learn how it's in the fabric of this country that nobody fucking likes, including us. But you struggle to listen to the music and the lyrics that literally say that. You struggle to see the imagery as something that triggers white folks, because this is culture that white people really love and enjoy, while hating and erasing the fact that we're the fabric of it. They really enjoy it, but they don't want to acknowledge we're the fabric of it. And they hate that we're a part of it. They hate that we're here while they forced us to be here. So it's like, let me make it plain for y'all to see that we're in this. And again, you can critique the use of that imagery for sure. Why not? That art is supposed to be critiqued. But to resort it down to just one type of thing shows you're culturally unaware, or you struggle to sit in cultural nuances and actually understand what nuance is. Nuance is often uncomfortable. It's contradictory. It's complicated. And if you actually understood culturally the identity of being black American, where your roots are here for generations upon generations upon generations, this would be very easy for you to get. It would. But it's easier to just resort us to being patriotic for a country rather than venerating a culture that our ancestors and we had a part in, whether we wanted to or not. It's easier to ask us where you're really from, because you understand that you shouldn't be proud to be from America or proud to have any ties to America. But this is where we're from. This is where my people, our ancestors, are from. And if we have to sit in the contradictory dichotomy nuance of that and try to learn how to not perpetuate the problematic American machine, y'all can sit in the discomfort of realizing there's a certain level of pride for what our ancestors have built and what we continue to build, because the rest of y'all, everybody got hands in it. Everybody does. This is what happens when you have a black culture that is surrounded by its oppressor, embedded in the same land and the same country with its oppressor. That's what we've been talking about when we say black Americans live amongst their oppressors, and we don't have an ethno-state. We don't have a majority black country like other people across the diaspora. This is what it looks like. Y'all are seeing it in real time. So because we're seeing it in real time, let's address it as it is, with its complexity and the nuances and the dichotomy and the paradox and the contradictions that it comes with, and approach it with some understanding and some comprehension and some critical fucking thinking.
Like, don't piss in my mouth and then call it lemonade, because what's the derogatory word for white people that's colonizing your land to this day? And for the Caribbean and Africans that say we don't have any culture, and come on now, we can already debunk that. What's your culture? And don't tell me food. It's to the point where I don't even want to date a Caribbean or an African that has a coon mindset unless you have a rider mindset. And Black Americans built this country, not Africans, don't you forget.
When many of these immigrants arrive in the United States, they often carry a completely distorted view of Black Americans, shaped by colonial influence, media stereotypes, and even teachings from their own families. Since the 1980s, this ignorance has too often translated into open disrespect. Many African and Caribbean parents have told their children not to associate with Black Americans, labeling us as lazy, criminal, or unmotivated. Meanwhile, they conveniently enjoy the rights, culture, and foundation that FBAs fought and bled for during centuries of struggle in this country. During the 1980s and 1990s, many of the older FBA generations extended hospitality, but instead of returning that energy, too many immigrants looked down on the very people who paved the way for their opportunities. Back then, our elders didn't always check that behavior the way they should have, either out of politeness or a hope for unity. But times have changed. The younger generation of FBAs is no longer staying silent. They're educated, unapologetic, and rooted in their identity. They're correcting the lies and checking the disrespect. And now that the pushback is happening, some immigrants are in shock. They're not used to Black Americans standing their ground, so they start throwing out false equivalences, comparing FBAs who speak up to white supremacists. That's gaslighting at its finest. It's a manipulative tactic used to avoid accountability and ignore the fact that some of the worst anti-Blackness comes from within the diaspora itself. The foundational Black American, FBA movement is a growing cultural and political movement rooted in the lineage of Black people in the United States who are descendants of those enslaved during chattel slavery. These are the men, women, and children who built America from the ground up, literally. FBA is not about division, but about specificity. It's about honoring a unique and often overlooked lineage within the Black diaspora, the people whose blood, sweat, and tears laid the very foundation of this country. From slavery to Reconstruction to Jim Crow to the Civil Rights Movement and beyond, foundational Black Americans have consistently been on the front lines of the fight for justice, not just for themselves, but for all Black people who later came to America seeking opportunity. The FBA movement was born out of necessity, as many freedmen Black Americans began to notice a troubling pattern. Despite decades of trying to embrace pan-Africanism and unite with Black immigrants from Africa, the Caribbean, and Latin America, many foundational Black Americans found themselves being rejected by those very groups. Many Black immigrants were taught by their parents to stay away from akatas, a derogatory term some use for African Americans, to not associate with native Black Americans, and even to deny their Blackness, preferring to identify solely by their nationality. They were often indoctrinated with anti-Black American stereotypes passed down from colonial governments or influenced by global white supremacy. This rejection was eye-opening and disappointing, especially since it came from people who shared skin color and African ancestry. But worse than rejection was the erasure. Many Black immigrants took full advantage of the gains that foundational Black Americans fought and died for, without acknowledging the people who made those gains possible. The Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act, affirmative action, access to education, housing, and job protections. None of these would exist without the sacrifices of FBA icons like Malcolm X, Martin Luther King Jr., Fannie Lou Hamer, and Medgar Evers. And yet, many of these Black immigrants benefited from the blood spilled on Southern soil, while looking down on the very people who made it possible. Some even went so far as to assimilate into whiteness, copying Eurocentric behaviors and values to gain proximity to white acceptance, all while mocking or ignoring the cultural legacy of Black Americans. Meanwhile, foundational Black Americans didn't assimilate. We created our own culture, our own music, food, fashion, language, and resistance, from scratch, under conditions no human being should have endured. From jazz and blues to hip-hop, from soul food to street slang, American Black culture is FBA culture. Now, in the age of political instability and rising racism, especially under the shadow of leaders like Donald Trump, some of these same immigrant groups want to suddenly unify with FBAs. They want to form alliances now because they see that white supremacy doesn't distinguish between Black immigrant and Black American when it comes to oppression. But unity cannot be based on fear alone. Real unity comes from respect. And to become a protected class in America, there must be proper classification, a clear understanding of who is who and what historical lineage is being recognized. FBA is not anti-immigrant, it's pro-truth. It's about making sure the contributions of our ancestors are not stolen or ignored. We are the originators of the fight for Black rights in this country. We carved out space in America against all odds. That deserves respect. If Black immigrants want to truly unite, then step one is to acknowledge the trail that was blazed before they arrived, by people who had no choice but to be here, yet still found a way to shape the soul of a nation. Tell me what you think about this topic. Hope you find the information in this video informative. Feel free to like, subscribe, share, comment. Thanks for watching.